Okay, let's dive in. If you feel like your life is just this constant wave of things to do, tasks piling up, emails overflowing, and you're always feeling like you're drowning, trying to catch up, and you know deep down that thought, you are never going to get caught up, well, you're definitely not alone. It feels like the modern world is almost designed for that overload,
And
doesn't
it
it?
really is. That's the reality check.
Mm.
Look, you will never clear the entire list. It's just not going to happen. But, and this is the good news, our sources, drawing from a lot of productivity research, they offer a really actionable system. It's built around, I think, 21 specific techniques, all designed to help you boost your output and, maybe more importantly, beat procrastination.
Right. So our mission today is pretty straightforward. Cut through the noise and give you the most powerful, the most immediately useful insights from all this material. We're structuring this whole deep dive around one really memorable metaphor. You might have heard of it. Eat that frog.
Exactly. And no, we're not suggesting you actually eat amphibians, thankfully. The frog, in this context, it's your biggest, most important task. You know the one. It's that item on your to-do list you're most likely to put off, but it's also the one that, if you actually did it, would have the biggest positive impact on your work or your life.
And this whole philosophy, it really comes from Mark Twain, doesn't it? He had these two basic rules for frog eating.
He did. Simple but profound. Rule number one, if you find yourself having to eat two frogs, well, you eat the ugliest one first.
Meaning, tackle the biggest, hardest, most important job right away. First thing.
Yep. And rule number two is, I think, absolutely crucial for anyone who struggles with procrastination. If you have to eat a live frog at all, it just doesn't pay to sit there and stare at it for too long.
To jump in, start immediately.
Start immediately. Don't overthink it.
Okay, that immediate action sounds good, but let's be honest, that bigger, uglier frog, it feels intimidating, right? How does just starting help override that initial fear or resistance?
Because the payoff is almost instantaneous. It's psychological. The moment you complete a significant task, your brain releases endorphins. It's a natural high.
Ah, okay, so you get a reward.
You get a reward. You feel happier. You feel more capable, more confident. And it's not just a fleeting feeling. Our sources talk about this, creating a kind of neurological loop, a positive addiction, they call it. You start craving that feeling of accomplishment, of contributing something valuable.
So you're actually motivated to find the next big task just to get that feeling again. That's the engine driving things forward.
That's the engine. But, before you can even identify which frog is the ugliest, you need to know what you're actually trying to achieve. Which brings us squarely to the first pillar of getting things done, clarity. The first technique is all about setting the table.
Setting the table, I like that. So it's about preparation.
Exactly. Preparation and clarity. The number one reason some people get, like 10 times more done than others, isn't raw talent or ability. It's clarity. And the rule here is incredibly simple but powerful. Think on paper.
Think on paper. And the statistic that backs this up is kind of startling, isn't it?
It is. It's almost hard to believe. The material suggests only about, 3% of adults actually have clear written goals. 3%.
Wow.
But get this, those 3% consistently achieve 5 to 10 times as much as people who might be equally skilled, equally intelligent, but just keep their goals swirling around in their head.
So the simple act of writing it down forces a commitment. It makes it real.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Writing forces you through what our sources call the 7 necessary steps. You have to define the goal properly. You need to set a deadline. You make a list of all the little tasks involved.
Okay.
Then you organize that list into a plan. You sequence it. And then, this is the kicker, you take action on that plan immediately. Even just one small step. Writing transforms a vague wish, like I want to be more productive, into something concrete you can actually tackle.
Okay, so you've saw it on paper. You've got this potentially huge list of tasks. Now what? It can still feel overwhelming. How do you filter that?
That's where the classic 80-20 rule comes in, the Pareto principle. And it's fascinating how often we get this wrong or don't apply it rigorously. And
Right. We know the principle, but applying it.
applying it is key. The core idea, as you know, 20% of your activities will typically generate 80% of your results. It's uncanny how often this holds true. So look at that list you just wrote. Chances are 1 item out of 10, maybe 2, is worth more in terms of real impact than all the other 9 combined. That's your vital few.
And the trap is?
The tragedy really is that most people procrastinate on that vital 20%. They procrastinate on their frogs. Instead, they keep busy with the easy 80%, the trivial many. They're busy, sure, lots of activity, but they confuse that activity with actual accomplishment. They are moving the needle on what matters.
So it's not about how much you tick off the list, it's about what you tick off, the importance of the task.
Precisely. Which leads us directly into the next strategy. Considering the consequences. Method 4.
Considering the consequences, okay, how does that work?
Well, the sources say the mark of a superior thinker, someone who's really effective, is their ability to accurately predict the consequences of doing something or not doing it.
Ah, so it's about foresight.
It's foresight, exactly. If a task or project has potentially huge positive consequences, maybe it unlocks major funding or lands a key client that has to be a top priority, that's likely an A task, a frog.
Makes sense.
And conversely, if not doing something carries potentially large negative consequences like missing a critical deadline, failing an inspection, then that task also becomes urgent, a high priority. Ignoring it has big downsides.
So thinking long-term actually helps you make better short-term decisions. It helps you identify the real frogs based on their future impact, positive or negative.
You've got it. Long-term thinking improves short-term decision-making. It cuts through the clutter of the merely urgent but unimportant tasks. And this ties into what the material calls the law of forced efficiency, which is basically...
There's never enough time.
Exactly. There is never enough time to do everything you could possibly do. But, and this is the empowering part, there is always enough time to do the most important thing, or things. You have to accept that your list will always have undone items. The real skill isn't clearing the list, it's choosing which critical items get done first.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Prioritizing by consequence, accepting you can't do it all. But how do we figure out what those important things should be, especially in a work context? This sounds like it connects to the idea of key result areas, or KRAs.
Absolutely. This moves us into method 7, focusing on key result areas. It requires some real self-analysis. You need to ask yourself, bluntly, why am I on the payroll?
Okay, that's a direct question.
It is. Your KRAs are the specific results you absolutely, positively must get to do your job successfully. They're the outputs of your work that often become inputs for someone else's work. If you can't clearly define, say, your top 3 to 5 KRAs, you literally cannot identify your most important tasks, your frogs, correctly. You're just guessing.
And there's this concept linked to KRAs about the weakest link, right? That sounds important.
Critically important. You could be absolutely brilliant at, say, 7 out of your 8 KRAs.
Yeah.
World class. But if your performance in that 8th KRA, maybe it's communicating complex data clearly or managing client relationships, if that one area is weak, it sets the ceiling for all your other skills and abilities.
Wow. So one weak area can hold back everything else, even if you're excelling elsewhere.
Correct. Your performance is judged by your lowest critical KRA. It determines the overall height you can reach. So this leads to maybe the most powerful question for career development. What one skill, if I developed and did it in an excellent fashion, would have the greatest positive impact on my career?
And the answer to that question probably points directly to your biggest, ugliest frog right now.
Very often, yes.
Yeah.
That skill is likely tied to a key result area where you need to improve, and working on it is probably your most important task.
Okay, so we've identified the frog using consequences, KRAs, the 80-20 rule. Now we need a practical day-to-day tool. Let's get tactical. How about the ABCDE method? That sounds like a way to organize the daily list.
It is. Method 6. It's a simple, quick, but really effective prioritizing tool you can use every single morning as you look at your list. You basically grade your tasks.
Okay, A, B, C, D, E. What do they stand for?
A tasks are the must-do items. These are your frogs for the day. There are serious negative consequences if you don't get these done. And if you have multiple A tasks, you don't just leave them as A, you prioritize within that list. A1, A2, A3. Your A1 is your absolute ugliest frog for the day.
Got it. A1 first, no matter what. What about B?
B tasks are things you should do. They have mild consequences if you don't do them. Maybe someone is inconvenienced or something gets slightly delayed. Think of these as the tadpoles. And the absolute unbreakable rule here is the key to making this work. You never do a B task when there's an A task left undone. Resist the temptation to clear the easy stuff first.
That's the discipline. Okay, what about C, D, and E?
Quick rundown. C's tasks are things that are nice to do. Checking news sites, having a non-essential chat with a colleague. There are 0 consequences if you don't do them. D stands for delegate. Can someone else do this? If so, delegate it to free up your time for your A tasks. And E is for eliminate. Look critically at your list. Are there things you're doing out of habit that just aren't necessary anymore? Maybe a report nobody reads. Eliminate them.
So ABCDE gives you the daily ranking, but you just mentioned C, D, and E tasks. The nice to-dos, the things to delegate or eliminate. What if they're still cluttering things up? This seems to lead into another concept, creative procrastination.
Yes, method 5. Creative procrastination. It sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't
It
it?
does a bit. Procrastination is bad, right?
Well, unconscious procrastination on important things is bad. Creative procrastination is the opposite. It's the deliberate, conscious decision to put off or even ignore low-value tasks. The sources call these posteriorities, the opposite of priorities. You intentionally delay the C's, D's, and E's to make sure you have maximum time and energy for your A1 frog. It's not lazy, it's strategic.
Okay, so it's about choosing what not to do. It sounds like the most important word in creative procrastination might just be no.
Bingo! That's the key. You only gain control over your time and your life to the extent that you stop doing things of lower value. We're constantly bombarded with requests, demands, and distractions. Mastering the art of saying no, politely, professionally, but firmly, to things that don't align with your A tasks, that's probably half the battle won right there.
Wow. Saying no strategically. Okay, so let's recap. We've figured out what the frog is using, KRAs and 80/20. We've prioritized it for the day using ABCDE. We've cleared the decks using creative procrastination and saying no. Now comes the really hard part for many people, actually starting that big, intimidating A1 task, overcoming the inertia.
This is where the mental game gets really important. And we need tools to break down that feeling of overwhelm. The sources offer a great analogy. Think about crossing the Sahara Desert. Specifically, a vast, flat, featureless section called the Tenasruft.
Okay, the Sahara. Sounds daunting.
It is. Historically, the way people navigated across this hundreds of mile stretch was by using black oil drums, placed about every 5 kilometers apart, just barely visible on the horizon.
Ah, so you weren't aiming for the other side of the desert.
Exactly. If you thought about the entire massive desert, you'd be paralyzed. It's too big. But the goal was simple. Just get to the next oil barrel. Focus only on that single visible step you can take right now.
I see. So stop looking at the whole enormous project, the whole frog. Just focus on the very next concrete action.
That's the mental trick. Break it down. And there are two really practical techniques for this. The salami slice method and the Swiss cheese method. Methods 10 and 18, I believe.
Salami slice. That sounds like the classic, eat the elephant one bite at a time. Just commit to doing one small, defined piece of the larger job.
Precisely. Lay out all the steps, like slices of salami, and just focus on completing the next slice. And the Swiss cheese method is slightly different, but achieves the same goal. You decide to punch a hole in the task, you commit to working on it for just a very short burst, maybe only 5 or 10 minutes, and then you give yourself permission to stop.
Only 5 or 10 minutes. How does that help?
Because of something psychologists call the compulsion to completion, or the Zeigarnik effect, our brains don't like unfinished tasks. Once you've started, once you've put that small hole in the block of cheese, it creates a mental tension. You've made progress, you've got a little bit of that endorphin rush, and it actually generates momentum. Often, you'll find you want to keep going after that initial 5 minutes. It bypasses the initial hurdle of starting.
So you use that tiny first step, that small slice or hole, to trick your brain into starting and maybe even get that positive feedback loop going. And once you've started, once you have some momentum, how do you keep it going? How do you maintain that speed?
That's about developing what the sources call a sense of urgency. Method 20. This isn't about frantic, stressed out rushing. It's about developing a bias for action.
A bias for action, meaning
Meaning, you move quickly and purposefully on your important tasks. You get things going and keep them moving. When you work like this, you often enter that state psychologists call flow. That's arguably the highest human state of performance, where work feels almost effortless, you're fully absorbed, and you're incredibly effective. Developing that sense of urgency helps you get into flow more often. A simple mantra when you feel yourself slowing down or delaying is just, do it now. Do it now.
do it now. Okay. But what's the biggest killer of that flow state, that momentum? I suspect it's multitasking or getting interrupted.
You suspect correctly. And that brings us to maybe the single most critical execution strategy for peak productivity. Single-handling every task. Method 21.
Single handling, meaning once you start, you don't stop until it's done.
That's the ideal. The research cited is pretty stark. The common tendency to start a task, stop, switch to something else, then come back. That can increase the total time required to complete the original task by as much as 500%.
500%. That's staggering. Why so much?
Because every time you switch away and then switch back, your brain has to essentially reload the context. It has to recall the objectives, where you left off, what the nuances were. It's incredibly inefficient, like constantly restarting a computer program.
So the discipline here is simple, but it sounds really tough in practice. Commit to working on that A1 task, your main frog, without interruption until it is 100%